Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. We're going to be doing a Q&A and you've sent me quite a lot of questions. Not going to lie, I did skim through them and I didn't get to all of them, but I wanted to have a little bit of a read through. I try not to get too into them because I want to be as off the cuff as humanly possible. It just feels more natural when you don't have time to overthink these things, because it feels like instinctually like your first answer is probably going to be your most authentic. So I kind of like to see what comes out when we do that. So I'm going to give a little bit of a spin here and scroll through. Okay, let's see here. Mr. Wrong One asked, do you welcome when mainstream companies attempt to goth things up with their products and embrace potentially alternative look or style, or do you just groan and shake your head? Probably back in the day when I was much younger, I would have definitely had a different reaction. Back in the day, I would have just scoffed and been like, ugh, posers. And that's kind of your natural reaction when you're younger. Your reaction is to just sort of look at everything else and oh, why are you trying to take my thing? You want it all for yourself, basically, and everything you eat, sleep, breathe, everything goth. So anything that kind of seeks to impinge upon your territory is something that's going to automatically make you kind of go at the whole concept of it. And I was that way in my teenage years though. But as I got older and I started noticing a lot of companies kind of taking notice and stuff, it made things a lot easier. So you do have the whole prospect of the whole popularization of goth. People becoming more interested in utilizing the look and giving themselves edge points when it's typically the people that gave you shit for it, like in high school and stuff, and the ones that kind of the ones that picked on goths in the first place are now the ones kind of donning the look. That in itself gets a little bit annoying, but for the most part, what it actually does is it makes these things more accessible to the rest of us. So it makes our lives a little bit easier and it makes it a lot more fun. Like when you're going out shopping, you're more likely to find the things that you'll want to find, as opposed to just having to dig. And there is certainly an element of fun in that dig, when you have to go on that Easter egg hunt to find that one treasure. There's always that fun in that. But at the same time, I think it's definitely a lot easier and more convenient when these things are more readily available. Kai Beller, I want to say, what do you think of the South Park Goths? I think they're hilarious. I really do. Every time they have episodes with them on, I crack up. I love them. Gothead420 wants to know, what do you think about cannabis or any other psychoactive substance? Did you have any kind of plastic surgery, and what is your favorite food? Wow. Okay, so you had a couple. Cannabis or any psychoactive substance. I personally would never use it myself, but I wouldn't begrudge anyone else because I know that it is useful in things like pain, anxiety, PTSD, but I myself, I'd be far too afraid to use it. Did I have any kind of plastic surgery? No, not yet. And I say yet because I'm absolutely not opposed. There are some things that I'm looking at, but I know that for myself, in the future, I know that there are things that would make me happy to kind of do. One of the things being a breast reduction. You can't tell because I wear minimizer bras, but I am a G cup. And it gets quite painful, and it hurts my back, hurts my shoulders, hurts my neck, and your boobies hurt. And it also makes finding clothing a little bit tough when you're petite, but everything else is. So that's one of the things I would certainly do. But there are other plastic surgeries that I would probably consider. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm certainly not opposed. And finally, what is your favorite food? Depends what day of the week you got me on. One day it'll be Mediterranean. I've been eating a lot of tomatoes lately, a lot of tomatoes, a lot of eggplant, a lot of mozzarella. And then next week it'll be sushi. So it really depends. Chris Penna 4582. As a biker, it seems that I attract goth chicks. Is there a reason for this? I have no frickin' idea. Seems like a lot of people answered you though. Anonymous says, I'm willing to bet you're attracting metalheads, not goths. Actually curious. Phantom Vox 951, video without makeup. I have done one. If you go on my TikTok channel, one of my recent videos, I just started up my camera and just started talking right after I woke up. Get me off this planet 4357. Are you married? If not, do you date? I am married. All right, scrolling up again. Let me stop right here. Femto? Am I right? Femto. Sorry, the lights are directly in my face, so when I read, it's kind of like a glare. Honestly, you're the first person I hear talking about how the goth aesthetic, born of how the music make you felt, and the concept of translating the amount of emotions that can surge from the songs to building something from your wardrobe without limitations that result in such expressive aesthetics. It's both mind-blowing and beautiful to me. Please, I would love to hear more about that. I think, obviously goth, the subculture being born in the music, the aesthetic kind of developed out of that, because if you look at early goth bands, take a look at the things they were wearing. It looks nothing like what we're wearing today. And if you look at the music that they were making, very dark, very macabre, very melancholy, very emotional, very dramatic, you notice that the aesthetic also began to change. And as the 90s kind of came along, that's when the romance got put into it musically. And then you noticed the clothing and the fashion and the aesthetic began to evolve along with it. The clothing became a lot more ethereal. You saw a lot more period style dresses, not quite Victorian, a bit more in the vein of Renaissance mixed with ethereal. But then you also had like the very vampire aesthetic, but it was still ruffles, brocades, corsets, things like that. So it was a lot of things that were very much inspired by the music. Like if you put the two side by side, say an outfit and a song, you could see the two complemented each other quite beautifully. So I think that the aesthetic was definitely born of the music as well. Just like the subculture was born of the music, the aesthetic kind of evolved around that. It was a reflection of how that music made us feel. So the music spoke to us on this like deep level, and the way that it spoke to us, it inspired us, and it kind of influenced the way that we presented ourselves to the world. It wasn't influential in the sense that it's like, peer pressure. It was more influential in the sense where it was like our muse, and it influenced our style. So you could really tell the kind of music that somebody was listening to that week based on their appearance, because it's that evocative. Going forward, Aaron Tech, are you happy? I don't mean always happy. It's impossible for anyone, but in your life, I would say for the most part, yeah, I am. There are definitely things that I wish that I could be much further along in. I want to own my own house. I want to be a mom. I would like to be further along in my career because there's a lot more things I want to add to it. And I'm also learning another language. I want to become bilingual because I feel like that can only help matters. And I think it's always good to at least know 2 languages, right? So it's something that I'm working on, but it's something that I am happy. I wish I could do just a little bit more. Kelly Zarak 9051. Mental illness in the goth subculture. Part of why I gravitate toward goth music, culture, and such is the way that it feels relatable to myself. Someone who has mental illness in my family, and I have it myself, I've actually come to realize that the subculture has given me a safe space to feel and express emotions. Any thoughts? I do. It's something that I can most certainly relate to, and I think the reason why is the subculture is a very open and honest place. When it comes to just people in general, just your average human, they're not as likely to want to share their emotions or be as open about their emotions. And goths, on the other hand, we're very open about things like mental health. We are, in all respects, probably an open book with a lot of things, and we're especially open about how we're feeling. So when it comes to things that are stigmatized, we're a lot less likely to hide those things. We're going to wear them on our sleeve. We're going to want to discuss them. We're going to want to embrace them, and we're going to want to embrace everyone else's stuff. So when it comes to things like that, I feel it's definitely a place where you can express yourself openly and not feel repressed in that. And it's not that goths are more likely, because this is a common misconception when it comes to the goth subculture. Goths, by their very nature, have mental illness, and that's why they're involved in the subculture, and that's not the case. It's just that goths on the whole are far more open when it comes to expressing themselves, expressing their emotions, sharing, listening, and we're not afraid to tell you what's going on with us mentally. I guess it's just kind of in the very goth nature. I myself, I have CPTSD. I grew up in a very unstable environment. A lot of you know me, you know how I grew up. A lot of violence, a lot of drugs, things like that. I wasn't doing the drugs, but my family was, and I was surrounded by just a lot of dysfunction, a lot of violence, and a lot of abuse. So it was a scary place to grow up, and the subculture is really where I found my home. And before I found the subculture, I had to hide those things from my peers because it's not something that you admitted. And in fact, if you did admit or like kind of tell anybody the environment you came from, you were mocked for it. You were the trash kid who came from the trash family, as opposed to in the goth community where I found a safe space and stable people who accepted me and embraced me, and I was not afraid to share. So I definitely, I could relate a lot to what you're saying. Okay, scrolling up. You Rolling Scones, you are one of the most popular goth-focused users on the platform. Does it ever feel stressful knowing that there are so many eyes on you? Now it does. Also, I missed your baking videos. You explain how difficult setting up and filming them can be. Yeah. I did enjoy that kind of content for you. Any plans of... Yes! Here's the thing. I love cooking and baking videos. I love them. I love them. And to create them is a bitch to set up. Especially now with my kitchen, the way that it's set up, it's just, it's a lot. And it's very, very difficult. But in the end, when I'm actually kind of editing the whole thing, it's a joy for me because I love being able to share that kind of thing. But the whole problem is, I go through all that chaos, all that mess, nobody watches it. Nobody wants to see that kind of thing, and it gets the most minimal views, minimal engagement. It's like nobody really wants to see it. And when you put so much effort into it, it's probably my DIYs and my cooking videos are two of the most labor-intensive things to film, because it takes two different cameras, takes a lot of different angles, it takes a lot of maneuvering of a lot of things like furniture and just getting the lighting right. And especially when you're baking or when you're kind of working with a DIY project, because there are a lot of things that can go wrong. You can cut wrong, you have to fix it, you could set something on fire. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of variables. So considering how labor intensive it really is, especially when you edit, and then you get to the whole uploading of the thing and you realize that nobody is watching it, it's just a buzzkill, and it makes it kind of not worth it. It's like, well, why am I doing it if nobody wants to see it? But if more people watch it, I will make more. I have lots of things that I could bake, and I want to show you. I want to show you all of the things that I bake because it's so much fun. I love baking. L_Alf. How are you doing? And will you ever be willing to turn your stories into a book or even use them to write a movie? I think it would be a great one. I would kill for an Angel Benedict book. You know, I want to, and I've thought about it so often. They always say, like, they say in terms of YouTube, make the kind of content that you would watch. And when it comes to things like a movie, I would watch that movie because so many just bizarre and wacky and crazy things have happened in my life. From the early stuff was, a little bit like tough to think about. But afterward, after I started coming into myself and got involved in, like I said, the subculture and meeting people and kind of integrating and becoming the person that I am today, there have just been so many wacky incidents and just fun things that I often wish I could just relive because it was just so much fun. But it's things that I would love to see. So, and it does remind me of a lot of my favorite 80s movies. It's like just off-the-wall stuff. So if that sort of thing were possible, 100% I would do it. CYAUUU. Is that three U's? Because I can't pronounce it, I'm just going to spell it. CYAUUU. Was there ever a moment when you lost faith in the goth community, and why? I did. And it was... I lost faith in the goth community twice in my life. And the first time is around 2005 when the kind of, I guess, cyberculture took over. And it was when like EBM was on the rise and it became kind of prevalent within the subculture. So all the goth nights were just overrun with people that were coming in from the different house clubs, raves, and they were playing a lot of house music, and they were playing a lot of EBM, a lot of electro and things like that. And it's something that I wasn't very used to. And I listened to some of it. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind a lot of the EBM, but it's something that, it's kind of part and parcel with other things. I was goth. I listened to goth music, and I didn't mind a little bit of a smattering of other things, but it was just everything. And then it just took over. And then all of a sudden, that's all there was. And the closest thing that you can get to hearing a goth song was synth pop because it was slower. And that was the first time. And then the second time is when I kind of fell out of the community by way of a really bad relationship. I left the country for a little while. And when I came back by way of YouTube. And when I kind of was looking around and seeing what was going on with the subculture, I just saw a lot of people like, oh, goth is a mindset. Goth is a feeling. Goth is anything you want it to be. Goth has nothing to do with music. Look at me. I listen to Taylor Swift and country music, but I'm a goth at heart. And then you had other people who were doing a lot of just like goth hauls and unboxings and things, not talking about the music, not even playing goth music in their videos. It was just sort of like generic kind of pop metal kind of things, and just showing you all their clothes that they had gotten, or makeup, or like, you know, transition videos, like goth transitions to normie, or just something like that. And I was like, well, where's the actual goth stuff? And, you know, for that brief moment, I did lose faith in the community until I realized that that wasn't the community. It was just other people, kind of their interpretation of goth. So I kind of, I guess, lost faith in the sense of like, hey, where are the real goths? Get them up here, get them on this platform, do something, because, you know, all of this is just going to confuse the hell out of people. Oh my God, how many questions? I don't normally answer this many questions from one person, but I'm going to give it a try. Christian Bethel wants to know, 1, do you know of any other goth activism other than Sophie? I don't. I should, but I don't. 2, what kind of games do goths play? That's based on a case-by-case basis. That depends on the person. As for myself, I quite like Cards Against Humanity. 3, what are major stereotypes levied against other goths? There's the whole mental illness issue, saying that we struggle with mental illnesses or are more prone to unaliving ourselves, which is not true. There's the whole sexualizing of goths, stating that we are, you know, our aesthetic is just a signal to the world that we are down for S&M and pain and things like that, and we never say no, that we are kind of this human blow-up doll here for the fantasy of every normie, which is total bullshit, and everybody knows that. And then, of course, we have the goths are only white people and no other ethnicity, which again, goths come in a beautiful rainbow array of humans, not just white. That goth is in fact metal music, which, as again we know, is not. Leger Lucretia, do you like industrial? And if so, what is or are your favorite bands if you have any? I do like some industrial music, but the industrial that I tend to like is a lot older stuff, a lot of things on like the Wax Trax label, kind of like Sister Machine Gun, Pop Will Eat Itself. I love Skinny Puppy. I love old Frontline Assembly, Yellwork, Project Pitchfork. When I say these bands, it's always the older stuff that I tend to listen to. I like older industrial music. I don't quite like what it's evolved into. It's not really my thing because it is much different now than it was back then. Unholy Tactician, how do I introduce my significant other who is part of the goth subculture to my parents? You put them in front of your parents and say, hi mom and dad, this is so and so. Ultimate Weapon 2000, I've always been curious about what subgenres of goth music you usually introduce people to who haven't heard goth music, and any suggestions on a few songs that you think are good introductions to goth from normies. Yes, okay. I had a crazy habit when I was a teenager, and I would turn goths. You know how vampires bite people and just turn them into vampires? I would kind of do the same thing and try to make other goths. I do it all the time. It's a weird hobby. But the music that I would use to kind of show them were things that were more electronic based, and the things that had a lot more electronic music in it was a lot easier for them to kind of understand, if that makes sense. It was more palatable for them, and it was more familiar to them. Because if you go straight in with something like, you know, something closer to Batcave or death rock style music, you're going to confuse the hell out of them, and it's going to scare them off. So you want to start them with something a little bit softer, but a little bit more, you want a little drama in there. So I would recommend kind of dark wave, and then any goth rock that kind of includes synths. Maybe some ethereal. It might be a little bit too much for them, but I would probably say dark wave is a good way to start. Think I'm saying this right? Lula Lies. What is your take on gothic metal, and can it be considered goth? No, gothic metal is metal music, and gothic is a descriptor term for the type of metal that it is, because just like goth, metal is a subculture as well. It's a music-based subculture with lots of subgenres to their music, and that's where we have our similarities. So whereas they have metal music with all these different metal subgenres, we have goth music with all our different goth subgenres. So gothic metal is metal music. Darkstar, Angela, you're literally my favorite YouTuber, and you're so cool. Thank you. I just want to let you know that everything becomes more calm and peaceful with time, and I hope that you and your husband have both been more content at ease with just life in general. Thoughts and stuff. Sweet. So my question is, how do you get rid of hyperpigmentation on a darker complexion skin? The skin around my mouth and chin randomly started feeling like it was burning a few weeks ago, about 5 hours after I did my usual skincare routine in the morning. Sunscreen, gentle cleanser, and Eucerin eczema lotion. So my question would have to be, do you have eczema? Or do you just use the lotion? Some people just like to use eczema lotion, but knowing whether or not you have eczema is going to be very important. I would say that maybe it's the food I consume, but I've recently been to an allergist and not been eating anything that is terribly unhealthy. It's around the mouth. Intermittent fasting. Plus, okay, you're intermittent fasting. Your skin can be damaged when you're young and playing outside, taking care. Okay, so to get rid of the hyperpigmentation on a darker complexion, what I would recommend is you want to do chemical peels. The one I always recommend to people is Dr. Dennis Gross Alpha Beta Peel Pads, extra strength, but I don't recommend that until you resolve what's going on around the mouth. One thing you said that kind of caught my attention is the fact that you're also intermittently fasting. With intermittent fasting, you're taking in a lot more nutrients. You're low on iron. That's when the skin around the mouth really starts to, for lack of a better way to put it, get jacked up. So if you have health insurance, get your iron levels checked. I would get your B levels checked as well. See where your B is, see where your iron is. So you might need to supplement that first, and that should probably help with the skin around the mouth. The only reason I say that is because I see that you're fasting. So give that a try and let me know what's going on. Also, do you have eczema? Grungy Faye 2712. Any tips? I'm having a hard time maintaining friendships with women in the goth community. I've always been a black sheep type where I don't really fit into one niche or the other. So goth adjacent, I guess, here. It's exhausting to be honest. Trying to go out to shows or clubs, making friends with an adult is cumbersome. Really? Yeah, it is. East Coast transplant on the West Coast, missing tri-state area. Yeah, it's very different. The temperament from east to west is so drastically different. And it could be hard. We could be a little bit more brutally honest when somebody will be nice to your face and might not necessarily mean it as much. I'll give you a good example. They say that people on the West Coast are nice but not kind, and people on the East Coast are kind but not nice. And the example I heard used is, if you find yourself stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire, somebody from the West Coast will drive by and go, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I feel so bad for you. That must really be hard. I'm sorry," and drive off. Somebody from the East Coast will drive by you and go, "Oh, look at you. What did you do? You got a flat tire, you friggin' idiot?" They will pull over, get out of their car, and they will help you change your tire, probably change the whole tire for you, and insult you the entire time and drive away. So that is the difference between nice but not kind and kind but not nice. So it's a very weird analogy, I know. Making friends as an adult is really, really hard, but I find that the best way to kind of start is online and finding an online community that's local to your area and just try to integrate that way. It's always a little bit easier. Wish it was like when we were kids, you just go sit next to somebody in the sandbox and just start playing and you're automatically best friends. Why can't it be like that again? Let's see, we have Manda Roberts 4596. Angela, do you think that if someone genuinely loves goth music and wears different styles, different days, based on their emotions, can they still think of themselves as a sometimes goth? So goth is not fashion-based, goth is music-based, and fashion is something that is very subjective. It's a way that we choose to present ourselves to the world. It's like our art form. It's how we feel. Because I could go outside tomorrow in a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt. That doesn't make me any less than a goth because I still listen to the kind of music that I do. But fashion is a form of expression, and far be it from us to kind of police that, because there are people who are outside the subculture who love the goth aesthetic. So, that's kind of the other side of the coin. It doesn't make them a goth, just means they like the clothes. So it doesn't matter what you wear. Does it help? Of course. Helps people identify you as a goth, but it doesn't change your standing in the community. TKAF 713. What are the best modern goth bands that aren't known about by most goths? And what makes most goth music different from the 80s and 90s, or most modern goth? The fact that it is not made in the 80s and 90s, I would say, is the difference, because it all kind of maintains the same spirit. I mean, you can obviously hear the difference in production value, and there are a lot of different kind of crossover subgenres that you see a lot more nowadays, when before there was a lot less kind of subgenres, but now you have a lot of different ones that kind of straddle. Okay, you're gonna have to give me a second here. We have Nox Navacula, Traitors, Nun. There's what's N-U-N with the 2 dots. Speaking of nuns, Merciful Nuns, Scary Black, She Passed Away, The Sculpture, Vision Video, Angels of Liberty, Bat Nouveau, Soft Kill, Ash Code. Drab Majesty doesn't really, they're kind of synth poppy, sometimes dark wave, but I think they still kind of like, they kind of fit the mode. I will not pronounce this correctly. Kaylin Milka. If I mispronounced that, I'm really sorry. Speaking of things I can't pronounce. Hante, Wingtips, Boot Blacks, Push Button Press, Schoenveld, is that how you pronounce it? Schoenveld. Velvet Condom, Plastique Noir, Lebanon Hanover, Celophan, Nightsins, is it Nightsins? Contravoid, Winter Severity Index, The Rope, House of Harm, VR Sex, French Police, Ashray Facts. There's a metric ton that I'm missing, but if you put any of those into, say, Spotify or Bandcamp, you're going to come up with a lot of different suggestions that kind of fit that vein. So that should help kind of set you on your path. Betty, what type of eyeshadow do you use or makeup in general? Love your style of makeup. Thank you. So at the moment, I'm using a palette by Black Moon Cosmetics, and I think it's called Orb of Light. And they have a really good rusty orange. It's kind of my favorite colors, like kind of a rusty, dusty orange, but I really like their palettes. I always use Black Moon Cosmetics lipsticks. They're liquid to matte, and as far as foundation, I use Dietary, which is, I can't remember if it's a Korean or if it's a Japanese, it's a cushion foundation. And once I figured out how to use them properly, it provides like the sheerest, most natural coverage. I love it. TittyTat8147. Hello, what do you think of goths who aren't really involved in the subculture and don't go to clubs? I want to go, but my severe agoraphobia has kept me from going out, but eventually I would like to go as I've been into goth culture and music for over a decade. What baby steps do you recommend? As a person who also has agoraphobia, I feel you, and I know how hard that it can be. So what I would recommend is try to do things as local as possible. First, attend an online event. So you have a lot of goths that are on Twitch that will DJ and have these live events who will either DJ for you or they broadcast live from their event and kind of become involved that way. Really watch it and get familiar with it, because the thing about agoraphobia, it's our fear of unfamiliar spaces and things that we can't control. And when you familiarize yourself with that space by way of seeing it in action and you kind of desensitize yourself to it because you're seeing it over and over, it makes it less foreign and more familiar to you. And then when it comes to things that you can control, that's a little bit more difficult, because it's hard to be out and about in an environment because we can certainly control ourselves, but we can't control others. And that's what makes things really difficult when it comes to agoraphobia, because we can't control our environment, and that kind of feeds the monster in a lot of ways. So what I would recommend is obviously never go alone. Go with friends, get your team, get your crew, get have your support system with you, and know that you could leave at any time. And that's the most important thing. You know where that exit is, and you know that at any given moment you could walk in, pay the cover fee, and decide no, and walk right out. That is your prerogative. Always know that nobody's holding you there, nobody's keeping you there, and there's no reason that you can't walk out that door after 5 minutes or 50. So it's all up to you. So knowing that you have that freedom to come and go as you please is kind of one of those things that rips the Band-Aid off and says, okay, I can do this. But start by familiarizing yourself and go to the online events. Just desensitize yourself to the whole experience. You'll be able to do it. Bunny Crazy Girl, if you could have your ultimate, absolute, ideal, no holds barred breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc., what would each meal consist of? I tend to like very healthy things anyway, so it might be very boring. But okay, so I would say eggs Royale for breakfast. So what eggs Royale consists of, it is eggs Benedict on top of an English muffin with spinach beneath that, with hollandaise sauce and smoked salmon on top. That would be my breakfast. Lunch, I would probably have a metric ton of sushi. And then dinner, penne alla vodka. Over Heaven, any shower skincare tips? I loved your recent video on skincare routine, by the way. Yes. Okay, so I highly recommend the Korean exfoliating mitts. You got to be careful when using those, and you have to kind of get the momentum right, because you need to kind of dampen your skin first when you use them. And then finally, when you your skin gets nice and damp, it loosens the skin up, and then you want to rub kind of this way. Start with the tops of your arms first. Do not rub too hard. Stay away from your face. And then you'll see that the skin peels off. And then look at the bottom of your tub. It's insane. It's a really good way to exfoliate. Our skin turns over every 28 days, but it's kind of good to get in there before the 28 days are up. I would say maybe every 2 to 3 weeks to kind of get in there and give it a good scrub, because just because it turns over every 28 days doesn't mean that our skin doesn't spend at least a week in a state of very similar to when a snake is ready to shed its skin. And you'll see how easy it comes off and how nice your skin feels after. I love it. As far as lotion, I use Palmer's Cocoa Butter. I'm smelling myself right now. I smell like chocolate. I love the stuff, but I've always used Palmer's Cocoa Butter, and it's definitely my favorite. Hornberg2593, my question is, how do you see the goth scene now compared to the 90s? I think this question is probably asked many times. And what is one thing that you would like to experience again and give you that one spark down memory lane? And second question, how would you make a video where you collaborate with other goth YouTubers, guest interview? See, we're kind of getting late in the video, so I think I'm going to only answer one. How does the goth scene compare to now versus the 90s? I think the difference now is people overthink things a lot. And the reason that we tend to overthink things is when we're given too much information and too many different ideas and perspectives. And when you overwhelm somebody, it gives them the opportunity to just overthink it and take it a little bit too far and too seriously. So back in the 90s, the difference was, and I say this a lot, if something says it was goth, it's because it was, and there was no misdirection there. There was nothing there to misguide or confuse you. People back then were a lot more sure of themselves and therefore held themselves differently. There was a lot less people walking around with imposter syndrome, for example, whereas now you have a lot of people just overthinking everything, whereas we definitely took ourselves, a little bit too seriously sometimes. They do it now in a different way, and I think it makes things feel a little less organic. And there's also that lack of in-person connections, whereas back in the day there was a lot of in-person connections because that was our way of communicating with people. It was very little of this, and it was like none of this. So because we didn't have those things, the only thing that we really had was to go out and seek each other out. So that was the way that we communicated, and we looked forward to that. We looked forward to those moments, and that's why goth clubs were such a big deal to us, because that was our time to integrate with our people and kind of be around people who were like us, and also obviously hear the music. But nowadays it's not quite like that, because there are a lot more options for people to integrate within the goth community and each other. But that kind of leaves out a lot of growth and a lot of opportunities for experiences and memories when you kind of take out that in-person interaction from the thing. So I think the difference really is you give yourself less opportunities to build memories and to make memories, to make experiences for yourself. I think that's probably one of the main differences. Celeste Pearl, what was your favorite childhood film? I thought nobody else would ask this. Little, it was E.T., Little Orphan Annie, and then kind of going up, it was The Goonies. And then I liked some movies that are probably a little kid probably shouldn't have seen, like Bachelor Party. Don't ask. Knives on Static, would you consider 90s industrial music like Kim FDM or Nine Inch Nails goth? Now, I would consider them industrial music. I would consider them very much adjacent, because back then it was more closely related to the music, if that made sense, because a lot of our events, they always intertwined. The goth scene and the industrial scene, we needed each other for survival and numbers. So we would come together, join forces, and we would have our events that way. So it would be like goth industrial. And the thing is, older industrial music was far more cohesive with goth music. But what industrial has evolved into now is much different. You have things like future pop, agro tech, which is much different from, say, Hate Department or Sister Machine Gun or very early KMFDM, things like that. So when you have those things kind of intermixing with the goth community, you had a lot of goths that listened to industrial, and then vice versa. But now they're so vastly different that you don't find that as much. I think there was more to your question. I know it's not traditional Batcave goth music, but I personally like to think of it as second gen goth, since a lot of goth clubs play industrial music now. It's not second gen because a lot of industrial music was around the same time goth was, and some might even argue before then, with bands like Cabaret Voltaire and Throbbing Gristle coming out in the 70s. And of course you had things like Kraftwerk, which is a little bit more electronic based, and then you have Einsters and Neubauten, who I think if you look at them side by side, they came up around the same time as the goth scene. So goth and industrial are two entirely different subcultures, but we did intermix. So no, it's not second gen goth. I would say that it's probably more second gen industrial than anything else, but we were, at one point, we were very much intertwined. Azul Anesthesia, What kind of skincare products and skincare routines would you recommend around the eye area? My eyelids, both upper and lower, still get very oily during the day. I use sunscreen and wear glasses if it's sunny outside. I would probably recommend oil absorbing sheets. You can find those online. You can find sheets that will actively absorb the oil without adding any kind of product to it. Wolfie the dog, 76. Have you had any gray hair yet? Is your husband from England? Which part of your parents is Filipino? Have I had, yeah, I've got a few. I started this year and it's freaking me out. I do have like a few smatterings of gray. Is your husband from England? He is. And which of your parents is Filipino? My mom. Green Goal 157. How do you feel about goths wearing clothes other than black? I love the white dress. Yes, I love incorporating color into like the goth fashion, but when it comes to the color white, there's something about the color white and I absolutely love it because I just love the stark contrast. Queen of Cats 36. Where do you get most of your clothes from? Are they DIY? Need to do more of this. Thrift stores and Poshmark, Depop, and a lot of it is like DIY as well. Pencil Sharpener 9048. What is the best concert you've been to, both in terms of sound and in terms of experience memories associated? I got two. Bauhaus in 1997, Sisters of Mercy in 1998. Amazing, or is it, no, might have been Sisters in 97 and Bauhaus in 98. Either way, it was before 1999. I saw both of them and it was insane. Emily De La Cruz, what is your racial, cultural background? Love the vids. Why, thank you. So I grew up Italian and Filipino. So I'm both Italian and Filipino, specifically Italian, Sicilian, Filipino. But after doing Ancestry DNA, I found out I'm a lot of other things, including Greek and Albanian. Killbot and Gorogor Attack. You've mentioned having PTSD and getting treatments for it. Would you consider cyclovin or magic mushroom assisted treatment? Supposedly it works wonders with people, even ones where nothing else worked, and that is something I'm so scared of. I cannot stress this enough. So a lot of my PTSD comes from parents that were drug abusers. I was born, I guess you can say, essentially on drugs because my mother never stopped while she was pregnant with me. So I was technically born on drugs. It's something that shaped my life and destroyed my life because of having to grow up in that environment. And I was never afforded a normal life because of it and because of the crazy things that I saw and had to endure as a result. So it was very hard for me. I've kind of gotten over that now, to take any medication at all, like aspirin for a headache, because I'm so vehemently against putting anything in my body. So the medications that I need right now, it took me a long time to even consider taking those things. But as far as magic mushrooms, things would have to get bad for me to even consider it. Scribe 13013. How on earth did you get to be so good? Good at what? Shingami 886 or 88X1. If you can learn any martial art, what would it be? I already kickbox. I kickboxed for a very long time, and I thoroughly enjoy that. I did really want to get involved in other mixed martial arts because I like the concept of grappling. Weird little known fact about me, I like fighting. I just do. I like fighting. I like fighting styles. I like different techniques, and I'm really interested in things like grappling, takedowns, and people are normally very surprised by that. Kind of countering that, I would say wushu. It's not really like a fighting style, but I just like the way wushu looks. It's very pretty. It's the type of martial art used in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I just find it very beautiful, very natural. Wouldn't be useful in any way, but it would still be something I'd be interested in learning. Linda Loud 5423. Would you ever consider dyeing your hair another color? Yes. So once I officially go fully gray, like my hair really starts to go gray, I'm not going to keep up the black because I've seen, number one, how fast my hair grows, and two, how that looks when the roots come in. When your hair is black, but your roots are coming in like white gray, does not look cute. So what I'm going to do is let the gray fully grow in, but then I'm going to put a toner in it to make it as white as possible. And I'll probably do things like, say, lavenders, blues, purples, and kind of work with those colors because it'll be easier to attach to the lighter colors. So once my hair starts coming in gray, I'm switching from black. Nile Alien, have you tried keto for your Hashimoto's? Kind of. I am 100% fully gluten-free. By doing that, I've noticed in the last 5 years, because I've been gluten-free since 2020, I've noticed that bad antibodies, they're called TPO antibodies, are the bad ones that attack your thyroid. I've watched that number drop from 900 to under 200. So it does work. Unfortunately, I miss God, I miss New York pizza. Alice Colley, 1861. Why is it that people say Goths should all be angry at the world and we're all nothing but posers? It's behavior I get towards me a lot. Who the hell is saying that? That is I'm not, like, this is not directed towards you. But firstly, why should Goths be angry all the time? Why should our subculture affect our mood at all? I think mood is intrinsic to the human, not the subculture. And no, you should not be angry at the world. And all nothing but posers. Why? What makes you a poser? This is what I want to know. Answer me in the comments. What makes you a poser? People respond to that. I want to see what they say. This Persian said, just ignore them. They have no clue what they're talking about. A health anarchist. For some, goth is a lifelong journey, from teenager and through your 20s. Then some of us become parents or get in committed relationships, watch our kids grow up, and watch some people leave the subculture and become normies. Something that saddens me still, but why do you think that it's a lifelong way of life for some of us? Now elder goths, even grandparent goths, and why does it stay with some and not others? Something I've seen a lot, and it's something that I actually wondered about as well, because there are people who I still stayed friends with on Facebook, but there were people who were very big parts of my life and in the subculture and in the community and very much part of my journey, and they seemed very deep into it. It was like they were in it for the long haul, and normies, complete normies now, and it was, for them, it was just a phase. And I think obviously in life we go through different phases. There are things that feel as intrinsic to us as an eye color or our favorite food, something that will never go. And for the ones that stay, I think for one, it's the stubborn people. And secondly, I think it's a lot more of the far more emotionally inclined people, because the more emotional we are, the more we connect to music and the more that we connect to memories. So we are probably far more sentimental, and we have more of a visceral connection to things like the music because of the way that they connect to our memories and connect to our own emotions. So I think that's probably something that also binds us to the subculture, is if we're far more sentimental people. That's just a theory though. Dark Spell 666, do you study any magic? I'm interested in lots of different types of magic, and I kind of just do my own thing, if that makes sense. I kind of do what feels natural to me, but there are a lot of different types of magic that interest me. Thomas Copley 7079, how is your dog doing? He's doing well. Bam Bam is doing well. He is asleep right over there. You'll probably hear him snore and stretch and fart like an old man. Ikuka 77689, when are you not a baby bat anymore? The moment you feel you're not the little kid at the kids' table anymore. The moment you feel that you can hold your own with the elders, you're not a baby bat anymore. Queen Mandy 4523, if you had to guess, do you think you'd remain goth and dress goth for the rest of your life? I do. I mean, I made it to 44 and I'm still doing it. So yeah, I do. Mike Shelton, when are you going to make lasagna? I don't know, actually. I haven't made lasagna in a really long time, and I got gluten-free lasagna sheets. Should probably do it. Theater Hobo. Does making your TikTok content actually feel fulfilling? Like, do you have any success stories sharing information about the subculture where people actually seem to respond positively? I've watched your channel go from primarily informative content. Oh, I remember this one. I had to respond to this one because they said a word that cracked me up, and I have toddler humor. I'm not going to laugh when I say the word. I've watched your channel go from primarily informative content and nostalgia story times to spending more and more time just arguing with doo-doo balls. Doo-doo balls. I'm a baby. Doo-doo balls. So I've only really started talking about like my TikTok journey, and I've only done probably, I would say three videos in total on TikTok. So I gotta say, being a little bit overkill there. I've definitely done videos on TikTok, but it's definitely minuscule compared to like the rest of my stuff. But I thought it was kind of important that I bring it over here and show people what exists out there, because I got far too comfortable on this platform. Like, yeah, it's utopia. Everything's doing great. Goth is doing great. Misconceptions are down and blah, blah, blah. I got over there and like TikTok was like, no, hold my beer. So when I make those videos, it's kind of to show people you still got to be diligent. You have to do your due diligence to represent the subculture, and don't feel bad or concerned about correcting people if they're wrong, because you're not correcting them because you're being a jerk. You're correcting them because you want them to get it right. Because if people don't have the correct address, they're not going to find where they're going to. They're not going to find the right destination. They're going to get lost. So you want to help them find where they're going. Edit. I noticed a lot of arguing videos that aren't there now, so it does seem a lot more balanced. Oh, are you talking about you might just be talking about my TikTok, not my YouTube. That's probably why. So I digress. But it seems very stressful. Yes. Yes. And like, people are really just trying to get a rise out of you for the heck of it. People suck. Like, they're baiting you and you keep falling for it. I'm just saying this without the full context since I don't have the app and just watch your YouTube responses, but I just hope it's not taking a toll and consuming you. So it's not taking a toll and consuming me. And so the reason that I do it, and the reason that I kind of stick to it, is because I want people to have the right information. But you have these people out there, and I find a lot of them by way of TikTok, and they're not necessarily interested in goth or the goth subculture, but they find themselves very threatened by the idea of subcultures, because these are people who are very entitled and they cannot fathom the concept of being excluded from something. Now, music-based subcultures, obviously we know that to be involved in a music-based subculture, you have to like the music, or you have to listen to the music. And if they themselves don't like it, don't listen to it, they become enraged because they're like, well, wait a minute, you're telling me I can't be part of your subculture? So what they see is you telling them that I don't accept you and you can't be part of us. And that makes them absolutely enraged. Even though that's not what we're actually saying, it pisses them off. Therefore, they will continue to make this content that will misguide, misdirect, and confuse baby bats. So as a modern baby bat, what they're doing is they're going online and they're doing whatever they can to find their way in the subculture to get the information that they need. But when they find these people first, they're automatically going to be led astray, and they're not going to find the very thing that they're looking for, because they're going to find these people instead. What I find these people akin to are like the spoiled little kid that threatens to call CPS on their parents because you tried to ground them. So they'll threaten you with repercussions, or they'll threaten you with a sullied reputation by way of throwing every phobic, every ist at you to see which one sticks, so that you can be deemed this very reprehensible thing. And by being deemed something so reprehensible, what that does is it silences you to the majority. Therefore, you may exist out there telling people your side, what goth is, which is something they disagree with, essentially telling them that they're wrong. But if they sully your reputation, what that does is it kind of ensures that nobody listens to you in the first place, therefore puts them in the right. And that in itself causes damage to the subculture, because what it does is it takes a lot of these baby bats and a lot of these people that are kind of coming in and they're trying to find the subculture, and they're getting misdirected and misguided. So they're not actually finding the subculture in the first place. And they may find this person's version of the subculture and be like, well, this doesn't feel like me at all. This is a subculture. I don't like this. This isn't me. And then they kind of move on and they find something else, never actually finding the subculture to begin with, thinking that, well, it wasn't part of who they are. And then they go on in life confused. So when I go over there and I make the videos that I do, I kind of fight for that authenticity and for that accurate information to be put out there, because I want people to find the subculture, the proper subculture. I want people to kind of be able to distinguish the difference and decide for themselves. Who knows, they might like this other person and be like, all right, I like this idiot, I want to be like them. And then go on and you know, be themselves, live their life. But why take that option away from them? Why take their choices away? Let them find the actual subculture. Let them find us. Let them find the events, the music. Let them find everything involved. Let them make that decision. But to cut them off like these people are, and not letting them find it in the first place because they don't want them to, because they want their echo chamber, I don't like that. That makes me mad. I love the subculture. I don't want it to die. So I want people to be able to find it naturally. So that's why I go out there and I do what I do. Because, you know, hopefully someday I'm going to be a mom. I hope. And I hope that, you know, when my child is old enough, if they're interested in the subculture, it'll be there for them. And if I'm not a mom, you know, to all future generations and generations that are existing and growing up right now, I want them to have that option too. I want it to always be there. So I don't want it to die, and to allow these people to continue with their rhetoric is a surefire way to just kill it. I don't want that to happen. Erjem, if I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it improperly, Erjem 5221, do you feel like most goths are elitists and put off many people from claiming to be goth? Note, I don't claim goth solely based on how elitist goths make people like me feel. I just say them darkly inclined. I'm not goth enough according to some elite goth people. So I would like to know exactly what people are kind of making you feel that way. And I want specifics, like name them. Name them. If they're on TikTok, link them. If they're on YouTube, link them. I'd like to see who you're referring to, because this is something I went looking for. And I noticed there's a lot of baby bat on baby bat aggro that goes on. And what I've found, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've found is that this baby bat on baby bat tends to be younger sort of goths that aren't actually goths. They're people who claim to be part of the community and do dress the part, but they're fashion goths. They do it for the aesthetic. And what they'll do is they will kind of police people based on their looks, but they're not actually part of the subculture. They will listen to things like Korn, Marilyn Manson, Slipknot, stuff like that, and they'll dress in like expensive goth clothing, and then they'll police others who actually do listen to the music. So I'd like to know where it's coming from. Addie97X, do you have any tattoos? I do not. I have commitment issues. There's a lot more, but I'm going to call it here. If you have any other questions, just post them, and I will add them to the list of things to answer. So all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, guys, bye.